record on the cloud. Okay. All right. So, as you guys all know, tonight we are going to be exploring navigating a dark night of the soul, which I'm really excited about. I know when it comes to like dark, anything to do with darkness or struggle, difficulty, a lot of people don't always want to look or don't always want to learn about this in the spiritual community. There's a lot of emphasis on love and light, and which is beautiful, but it's incomplete, right? So today what we're going to be looking at is this, what I see as a really initiatory period in one's life and one's journey. You may be going through this right now. I believe we are collectively kind of going through this right now. We're all experiencing this in varying degrees because of what we're experiencing, obviously, on the planet right now, globally. So yeah, I definitely thought this would be like a really good time for us to explore what a dark night of the soul is, how that may show up for us, what that looks like. And I think also like knowledge is power. So when we can really understand something and energy, right? Like essentially, this is all energy. We're working with energy. So when we can learn how to work with this energy, um, it can be really, really healing and transformational. And there's a lot of gifts, a lot of wisdom, a lot of access into higher worlds, higher consciousness, higher knowledge, all of these beautiful things that can come from this period and this cycle, I guess you could say, in one's journey. So yeah, I thought that's kind of what we'll be talking about tonight. I do have a lot of notes, so if you guys notice me just kind of like looking to the side, I'm just trying to keep up, making sure that I'm saying everything. As always, I have a few of you joining me live, so at any time, if you guys want to ask a question or there's something that maybe I'm not explaining quite clearly, you want me to expand on that, you can just unmute yourself and feel free to interrupt me. Sometimes, like the chat, I know in previous ones, I've invited you to do that and then I don't even notice that someone messaged in the chat. So yeah, just unmute yourself. And then at the end, we'll see, maybe on camera, off camera. It's been working really nicely. We've been kind of doing discussions off camera. So if you are watching the recording, that's just, come live, because there's so much more that you can get when we're all here in session together. So yeah, we'll see how things flow tonight. But yeah, so topics of discussion, we're going to look at a little bit of the history of the term Dark Night of the Soul, as well as just some other like terminology. So everyone kind of uses their own language or different wording for what this energy or this phase, this period is. And then we'll also look at a little bit of maybe some like occult and esoteric symbology of the dark night of the soul. So yeah, we might talk about that, we'll see. But really what we're going to dive into is the spiritual initiation that this is, how we may know, or how can we tell if we're experiencing a dark night of the soul, and what's actually happening as we're going through this phase, and how we can work with this energy. Okay. So to begin this term, which I've chosen to use tonight, the Dark Night of the Soul was first made popular by a poem, as it was like the title. He wrote a poem called The Dark Night of the Soul back in the 16th century by a Spanish mystic and poem, St. John of the Cross. So I didn't pull up the poem or anything to read, but if you're interested in, doing that, that's something you can always do on your own time. So you'll see this term used a lot, I think, even in Christianity and like the Bible. I'm not even sure if it's actually in the Bible, but I think, yeah, it may be used a lot in religious context. Obviously, you guys know that my work is non-denominational. I don't attach any of my work to any religions, but you may see it there. Um, so yeah, that's basically where that term came from. It's also very connected to a Saturn return. So I know some of you are probably going through that right now. So usually that starts around the age of 29. So this is when Saturn makes its full return back into where it was at the time of birth. So it works in about 29-year cycles. So if you are going through your Saturn return, chances are, or coming into your Saturn return, chances are, this is going to be very alive for you. And I know both of you are like around that time too. My Saturn return in particular was complete dark night of the soul. I'll probably talk a little bit more about like what my experience was and how that showed up for me. And then, yeah, if you guys want to kind of share kind of what you're going through right now, how that's showed up for you, by all means, we can do that later. I would love to hear. So yeah, I personally, my dark night of the soul or my Saturn return felt really intense when I was facing loss, death. Like, I think this shows up in the form of some sort of loss for many of us, whether it's the loss of a loved one, the loss of some sort of identity, maybe a job, a relationship. It can show up in many, many ways. And that's essentially what we're going to be talking about tonight is death and loss and how, a lot of us have a lot of fear around this word, this topic, this um, part of our life cycle that we all go through. So, what I hope to bring light to tonight is just maybe allowing us to kind of move through this fear rather than avoid this fear of death and use this period, this initiation as an invitation for us to really look at um, death and loss and how we can really use this energy to transform us rather than to hinder us or to break us. Not that we are ever broken, but to really like cause a lot of destruction because it can, right? It's quite destructive, but it's also quite beautiful and magical. And so we will be going into um, the beauty of death and darkness and true darkness and what that really means. But yeah, for myself personally, I guess I can just kind of go into that. I was going through a massive death portal because I had left Colombia where I was living. I left a job that I loved. I was, um, moving back to Canada. And when I returned, when I arrived back home, I just 2 weeks later, I got news that um, one of my closest friends from high school had passed away. So it was like a lot of death, energy, a lot of loss all at once. And I wasn't fully conscious or fully aware of, all of this stuff yet. I was definitely on a spiritual path, but in no, nowhere near where I'm at now and didn't have much awareness around, a Saturn return. I did a little, but not as much as I do now, right? So it definitely shook me, but it led me into all that I know now and all that I teach and all that I share with everyone. And it led me to really look at aspects of myself that needed healing. I think moving from Colombia back home where a lot of my traumas, a lot of my past memories like took place naturally was kind of bringing up a lot of things for me so that I could face and I could look at and I could heal. And yeah, so now looking back after going through that, which felt like hell, like it was so difficult. And yeah, I thought it was like losing my mind. I was so full of fear and anxiety. I could barely get out of bed to go to work. It was really, really challenging. But, making it out on the other side, like I can tell you guys, there's so much wisdom and so much that you will gain from moving through this and from yeah, just being with it. If, you know, if there's anything I can say, it's just don't run away from this. And I think it's no coincidence that the previous master classes were all about being present and not dissociating, because a lot of the times when all of this starts to emerge, there's this part of us that wants to run, that wants to hide, that doesn't want to look at it because it's so intense and it can be so painful and hard to hold and look at. But it's only coming up for us to look at it so that it can be healed, right? So that we can say, okay, no, this is not serving me. This isn't me. This isn't who I am, right? These are all just illusions essentially that are coming to the surface for them to be released and to be let go of. So yeah, that's pretty much my story. I've definitely since then, I would say I've gone through more smaller dark night of the souls. I think, yeah, you both know that just even this summer, I went through a bit of this after leaving a really long-term committed relationship that, even when we're in a really good, solid, grounded place and there's a willing and a knowing that something like that, a readiness to let go of something, there's still aspects of ourselves that will emerge from that and are just showing us, shining more and more light on, some of the fears that we may still have around death and loss and dying and going through a massive rebirth, right? It's always going to bring up more things for us. But it gets easier because we can see that these times and letting go of something that's not serving us or allowing a part of ourselves to die is really allowing for new life to take form, right? And it's a beautiful rebirth process that we get to go through. So yeah, if you've probably experienced a few of these in your lifetime, some you may be conscious of, others maybe not at all. But now learning this, you can be like, oh my God, that's totally what that was maybe in the past. And as they arise, you'll be more welcoming of this energy because you know the power that it brings and how transformative it can be. That was definitely my experience this summer. I was very open to being in surrender of all and just allowing whatever needed to take form to be birthed through me, essentially. So yeah, how are we doing? Do you guys feel good? Just like keep going, or does anyone have anything they want to share? We're good. Okay. So I also wrote here that it's really just an invitation for us to take a massive quantum leap, right? So this is where we're essentially hopping timelines. We're going through our life on this one trajectory, this one timeline or experience, and then there's something that's either it's almost like something's coming in like a force that's causing us to make all of these changes, right? A lot of the times it can feel like it's out of our control, or there's just this push, right? There's this driving force that's asking us essentially to make choices or changes in our life to let go of something, right? That something needs to die, that something needs to be let go of. And by doing so, that's when we can kind of quantum leap, we can really hop into an entirely new timeline, an entirely new trajectory that's more meant for us, right? So that's key. And then also I see this as a spiritual initiation. I've been saying that we're really with this dark night of the soul initiation, Saturn return, the black sun, you may also know this as, um, it's peeling back a layer or a veil for us to come into deeper layers of our awakening, right? So when we look at the path of awakening or spiritual awakening or remembering, self-realization, right? These are all terms that we can use when we look at our awakening. There's so many layers to that, right? And so each initiation is just peeling back another layer of the veil so we can see more and more clearly who we are, and who we truly are, what our true nature is. We're peeling back those layers of illusion. And so I also see this as an initiation into understanding true darkness, and also understanding um, unity, I guess you could say. So understanding how the dark and the light form the whole. Like if we look at the yin yang and we have like the light and the dark aspect, and that creates the whole, the unity or peace, right? We need both pieces of the puzzle. And I mentioned, I can't remember if I already hit record or if I said this before we even started, where there's, the love and light and the spiritual community, and there's so much focus on the light, and being in the light, and everything needs to be, light and amazing and happy and all of this, that we completely bypass the darkness. And then there's that element of incompletion. We want to be complete, right? We want to realize, um, our wholeness. And that's essentially what this is reflecting back to us as well, when we learn to work with the dark as well as the light. So it's nothing to be feared or run away from. We have a lot of tools, like we talked about in the previous master classes, around being present, right? So if there's one thing that we can do for ourselves, it's to stay present and to just allow ourselves to surrender and move through whatever's arising without as much, without resisting it, right? And I think that today, hopefully, this will help you feel like empowered to just like surrender and let this energy just completely transform and move you. So when we're looking at Saturn return, for those of you who may not be as familiar with the Saturn return or what that is, Saturn also is very connected to the black sun, and the black sun, which is also another term that we can use to describe like the dark night of the soul. So if you're familiar with that, Saturn is very connected to that as well. So there's so many connections here, and Saturn really represents structure, law, restriction, discipline, responsibility, obligations, ambition, death, fundamental changes, overcoming bad habits, our karma, judgment, as well as time and aging. So, when we come into that full cycle again, this is what's kind of being shaken, right? This um, responsibility, I would say, is huge, especially for me. There was like a lot of fear around responsibility. And this is kind of when we come into like true adulthood. Many of us feel like we've kind of been conditioned that, at the age of 21 or 19, even, right? This is our initiation into adulthood. But the way that astrology views this really doesn't happen until around the age of 29, 30, which personally I resonate with quite a bit, because I never felt like an adult until that age, where it was like I really needed to face how I was still being really immature and childish, and what behaviors and um, lack of responsibility I needed to leave behind, so that I could step into this next phase in my life, which is adulthood, and taking on more responsibility and commitments and all of those things. So that may be a theme that arises throughout your Saturn return as well, which is essentially just reminding us of our boundaries, what we're really passionate about as well, right? Like what responsibilities and commitments we want to make, or that are, connected to our purpose and why we're here, and what we're truly passionate about, because there's almost like this element of questioning our purpose and wanting to take on more responsibility, right? There's a fear of it, but there's also a desire to take on more, and to take it on in a way that feels truly aligned for who we are, and our true authentic selves, right? So yeah, I hope that's landing okay. I hope that makes sense. And then if you want to see, so like I think it's fun just if you're into kind of like occult or esoteric symbology, I did mention we'll see this replicated as the black sun in tarot, if you ever play with that, the death card obviously. We can also see this kind of the symbology of the moon. Sometimes we'll see like the sun and the moon, right? So like those that symbolic representation as well can kind of be this energy, this death energy, this dark night energy, like a black crow or raven, skulls, right? You guys are very familiar with this symbology. So here we're just kind of understanding what that truly means and how that can show up for us. And also the feminine. So, the darkness is the feminine and it's contraction, right? So it's that pulling inward and that coming inward so that we can expand and we can come out into the light. So we'll be talking about that quite a bit as we continue the true darkness, the true feminine, the life, death, rebirth cycle, all of this. So I think next we'll kind of talk about just like some signs that may arise if you are going through this, or how you may recognize or notice that you are going through a dark night of the soul. Not that I think we really need this because usually you just know, but this can be a little validating. So I would say it does usually begin with facing some sort of loss. Like I mentioned, like how mine, there was like, you know, symbolic death, but then there is also a physical death. So it could be both. It could be one or the other. It doesn't need to be both. Or um, and also or facing like a choice point, right? You're at a point in your life where you need to make a big decision, and there's probably a part of you that's like one foot in, one foot out. You're kind of in between worlds, and there's something that maybe your soul's wanting, or there's like a deeper desire that there's probably some fear around, but and then there's this part of you, this older version of yourself that's trying to kind of keep you back, mostly for protection and fear of death, right? The ego is going to get loud when we're trying to make new decisions and kind of face these choice points. But that's also kind of, you can see this really show up when that's arising for you personally and or collectively, right? And so, yeah, any sign or personification of death in our reality will bring this up. So it's a mirror for us to look at our relationship with death and an invitation to heal our fear of death, which is the lesson to be learned here, right? The fear that's wanting to be overcome. And so this can show up as really forcing us to look at death in new ways. So maybe that's because of the loss of a loved one. It can even be like suicidal thoughts. This is hard to talk about, but this is something that I think we need to talk about because this comes up a lot during these times. And I think it's healthy, or it's good to understand that these thoughts are coming up not necessarily because there's this yes and no. When things get hard, we just want to escape or kind of leave our reality in some way, shape, or form. And sometimes that can manifest as these suicidal thoughts or these really dark, intense thoughts. But we can also view that as those arising, as a form of our healing, because they may be coming up and there's this realization or this fear around completely, ending our life or leaving the earth at this time, right? So, yeah, it's just also kind of making us look at where we need to make changes in our life, or what's being revealed at that time, because oftentimes those come up because there's something that we're not looking at or something that we're needing to really face as well. So of course, seeking help if that is something that's really showing up for you, and it can be really difficult. So making sure that, you know, you find help if that's something, um, you know, that's really present for you. And it was definitely a part of my journey. I was experiencing a lot of these suicidal thoughts, but I wouldn't say to a point where I was ever like super, super serious about actually taking my life, right? It was just these thoughts and something for me to look at to clear and know that that wasn't what I actually wanted, right? And so this can also show up as awareness of the life, death, and rebirth cycle. So maybe you're coming into information and knowledge and wisdom around this just being part of our cyclical nature. I know with especially you two being here, in activating sacral powers, we go into looking at our menstrual cycles too, and this cycle of like life and death and rebirth and our cyclical nature and all of this. So this is something I know you guys are really familiar with. And then also ego death, right? So this can show up as death of identity, right? This identity or this belief that we have this attachment to a certain identity that needs to die, that needs to be let go of. So past memories will begin to or continue to resurface. You may notice that a lot of memories that maybe you never once remembered are starting to come up, or even things that you've always remembered, but they're coming up more and more and more, and you can almost like it's almost hard to avoid them. So again, they're coming up for you to heal them, to clear them, right? To let go. There could be, I mentioned this earlier too, a desire to run or escape from life, your body, the current situation, whether that be like with disassociation, right? We've talked about turning to like foods or alcohol and drugs, different substances, even TV, right? Just constantly wanting to watch Netflix or, you know, do things that are distracting us from really facing and feeling what's coming up for us. So yeah, that pull, that desire to just really escape or run from what's coming up. A feeling of great loss or hopefulness, fear, anxiety, depression. This can also be really, yeah, really amplified at that time. And I know I've talked about this before, it's quite controversial, but I do think sometimes our idea of mental health may not be what it truly is. I think there's a huge spiritual component to a lot of the mental health issues that we're seeing play out in our current day and age. And I think that really stems from um, this illusion of separation and yeah, just this illusion of and not really being connected to ourselves and our true nature and the divine, right? So that's basically what this is, as well as it's an invitation for us to explore our true nature, our divinity, spirituality. A lot of people, that's my next point here, is just feeling drawn or called to explore more spiritual topics or practices, material, all of this, like this curiosity, this hunger for knowledge around some of those more like existential questions that will also be very present at this time. A desire to find or know truth. So this is something else like that truth seeking, really wanting to find answers to life's greatest mysteries, and also questioning our own life path and purpose, right? Experiencing synchronicities. So you may find seeing numbers or like repeating numbers or just little signs and you know, being in the right place at the right time, or just finding, you know, you're in a bookstore and a friggin' book just falls off the shelf and it's like the book that answers all the questions that you've been contemplating, right? All of these things, these are synchronicities. So you may start to notice those more and more. Going through a massive release or purge, right? So we talked about this quite a bit. Um, with like death basically, but also this can be felt like it could be, you know, just crying, right? Like releasing emotions where you're crying, maybe you're shaking, or there's just like energy. Like for me, I felt it like just like trembling, like I would be shaking, so like my nervous system was almost like on overdrive, and I would be just like shaking, and it would bring up a lot of fear to, like, what is going on, why am I, you know, shaking uncontrollably like this? But that's also just like a sign of purging and releasing and letting go and moving trapped and stuck energy. Um, you know, like purging, like physically, vomiting, getting sick, all of these can also show up as healing, right? As a sign of healing or detoxification. And then lastly, I also wrote just like experiencing a lot of dark thoughts or intrusive thoughts as well. So thoughts that may not feel like your own, especially because we're in a lot of density and we're feeling a lot of like depression and fear, anxiety. All of these energies can also attract a lot of like lower dimensional beings and entities that can sometimes, you know, affect our thoughts and our energetic nature, our feelings, all of that. So also just being aware of that, that can be going on as well. We talked a little bit about that in one of the embodied presence master classes. Yeah, so that's what I had. I don't know if you guys have anything else that you've been experiencing throughout your dark night of the soul that you're like, you want to share, you want to add, or if you have any questions, or we can keep going. We're good. We keep going. Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, so the mental health part and like searching for spirituality and stuff, like you mentioned,
Mhm.
um, I'm surprised to hear that that can be controversial because honestly, I was doing like counseling and therapy and everything. And you know this, when I got to the point where I was like, okay, like we're done here. I need something else. And I started telling her about the work you were doing. And she was like, yes, like that is your next step. That is what you need to do. Like that is the community and spirituality that you need, you know? So I guess I was really
Mhm.
lucky to have a counselor who definitely saw that side of things and knew like, yes, you need that for sure.
Yeah, no, I love that. And maybe it's just also like my perception that this is controversial because it's something that I think, yeah, there's just so much stress on mental health issues right now, and how um, we need to look at it and let go of some of the stigmas around it, which is so true. And I totally believe like we need to really understand mental health more. But I think a lot of you know, mainstream health, I guess you could say, or even like Western medicine doesn't normally look at spirituality, right? So more of like the holistic lens. I think we are seeing more and more of that, which is great. Or like naturopaths, if you work with naturopaths, I know they're very well versed in this as well. So yeah, I'm so glad that you have had that experience, but I think it's something that we need to have more discussions around, because there's not much discussion around spiritual health, right? We talk about our mental health, our physical health, a bit about our emotional health, but then spiritual health, you know, and that's why I truly believe we're experiencing a lot of what we are collectively right now, because there's been just this complete separation from spirituality for in many ways, and obviously for many reasons, right? So that's what we're coming back to. So yeah, I'm so glad that you guys have found that, because for me too, it was like it's what I needed, right? Doctors are so willing to just prescribe more medicine, more medicine, more medicine, which is, you know, causing more harm in a lot of cases, when truly we just need to realize, like, you know, we are these spiritual beings having a human experience and remembering who we truly are, right? So um, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Okay, so here I have lots here. I've kind of already touched on this, but this is really just the energetics of, death, the feminine, the true darkness, all of that. As I mentioned earlier, this can be felt as a really powerful force, right? It can come in hot and it can really throw us off of our center and out of balance, especially when things are just going great in life and, everything's falling into place. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it's like, what the hell is going on? Everything around me is just like crumbling or falling down, and it's intense, right? It can feel very, very chaotic. Um, but it's also happening for a reason because we're learning how to become masters of this energy and how to um yeah, as I've said before, right, how to let this truly transform us and learn how to truly let go, because I know in my personal experience, until my first like really conscious dark night of the soul Saturn return experience, I don't think I really knew how to like fully let go of things. I was still holding on to a lot of things that I had thought I let go of. And yeah, it can be an invitation for us to really understand what that means to let go, how to surrender, and and see that we're still okay. If anything, we're more than okay on the other side of it, right? And it can make it a lot easier for us to let go when other things arise that we realize are no longer serving us. So just embracing the chaos, allowing it to be there, not making it mean anything bad or wrong. Sometimes we can be really hard on ourselves and, um, you know, punish ourselves or talk really negatively about ourselves because we're not where we thought we wanted to be at this phase in our life, or, you know, so that's also an invitation here, is to come into unconditional love and learn to meet ourselves where we're at and just be, right? Be where we're at and be present with what's arising. And yeah, it feels chaotic because of the illusion of separation, right? So essentially, that's what's being healed, is that illusion of separation, which feels so intense because we are here on the third dimensional plane and everything is so physical and so polarized that we're in the darkness, that it can be so hard to see the light and to remember and realize that they are actually one, and one and the same, right? So it does feel intense, but um, yeah, it's learning, it's teaching us how to transmute energy, right? And then it's an initiation, sorry, into the underworld, which is also known as our inner world, which you guys all know I love to navigate and bring you through. So a lot of the times we go through life really focused on materialism and everything that's like physical around us. And this can be an invitation for us to let go of that a little bit and to turn inward and to explore our inner world. And this is where, some of those subconscious and unconscious aspects of our mind or consciousness really begin to emerge, and we can kind of, they become conscious and we can see these shadow aspects, right? Or these subconscious, these unconscious aspects of ourselves come up, right? So this is also part of our ascension journey, or some may also call this an inscension, which I like because it is an inward journey, right? We're going in and coming up and through. And this is really a drive to move inwards, right? We're feeling that push, like, okay, all of these things outside of me and around me aren't working, and I'm trying to change things on a physical level, but nothing's changing, right? It always starts from within, and we have to remember that we have to go within, right? If we're not, again, it's incompletion. There's a whole part of ourselves that we're completely denying, avoiding, or forgetting. And so we're moving into the inner worlds, the inner planes, where we can travel through time and space. We're really moving and learning how to move through densities and dimensions to evolve spiritually, naturally, organically, right? This is part of our natural cycles, like we talked about: life, death, rebirth, right? This is part of what we came here to live through, to experience. And there's lessons and there's wisdom and there's knowledge that comes from each time that we find ourselves here. And so the ego mind, I touched on this a little bit earlier, right? It's that part of us that is so attached to identity. And it will fight, and it will come up, and it will be blah, 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 talking our ear off, trying to keep us trapped in these lower states of consciousness, in these old identities, beliefs, whatever it is, right? That's no longer serving us. And it's done so from a place of protection, right? The ego is just wanting to keep us safe and wanting to protect us. But we must learn that we are here to become masters of death. And that's what this is, right? It's learning to master the process of death and dying and letting go and releasing and surrender and purge and all of these things, so that we can allow the ego to die, right? Over and over and over again until we find our true nature, our true self. So fears and shadows, right? We talked about this. Fears and shadows will arise so that we can turn inward and we can alchemize or transmute, right? I've been using this term a little bit with my new program, even Inner Alchemy. This is what we're doing, right? We're learning how we are the alchemists. We're the magician, right? We have the tools, we have the power to transform and transmute anything that we are experiencing, in our reality and our being, right? Internally. And so, what did I write here? We're transmuting what isn't serving us, these illusions we may be attached to or holding on to. We may realize that the past experiences we have had do not define us. So I've talked about this, especially in one-on-one containers, when like trauma and a lot of trauma starts to arise, and how we almost identify with an experience that we have, where we almost carry that experience as who we are, right? We over identify with it. And so this is arising for us to realize that's not who we are, or has nothing to do with who we are, what we are. It was simply just an experience, so that we can let that go and we can realize and remember that it does not define us. So yeah, they're simply experiences that we can let go of to understand our true nature and our true identity. I also see this as an invitation to heal self-abandonment. So we've talked about the illusion of separation, and I think separation and abandonment can go hand in hand. And separation from self, and separation from, when we're looking at separation from self, we're also looking at separation from God or source or creator, our divinity, and also this aspect of ourself where we can abandon ourselves, right? So a lot of the work that I do, as you guys know, working one-on-one with me, is looking at ways and where we have been abandoning ourselves. And this will show up a lot, right? If you are going through this phase, just really being aware of Where am I denying myself? Where am I denying my desires? Where am I denying my needs? Where am I not speaking my truth, or, speaking from an authentic place? What am I not um, giving love to or attention to, right? This can show up in so many ways. So it's also an invitation for us to repair our relationship to self and with ourselves, right? Learning to prioritize ourselves, feeling our feelings, allowing, ourselves to set boundaries and say no when we really mean no, and all of these things, so that we can we can cultivate a deeper relationship with self, as well as our intuition and our relationship with the divine, right? A lot of us want to connect with higher worlds or higher information and be intuitively guided, and um, essentially learn how to get out of our own way. So that's a huge part of this initiation, as well as healing that relationship um, with self, so that we can stop self sabotaging and getting out of our own way. Um, the process of death, I've talked about this quite a bit, and the alchemical process, right, which is turning lead into gold, right? Pain into purpose. We've heard this many times. Bringing light to the darkness, working with both of these energies together to create and really understand union and our whole. And just a period of transformation and attaining spiritual mastery. So, learning how to use this energy so it doesn't use us, because that can be very, um, that can happen, right? Where if we're not working with this energy in a conscious way, then it's completely going to use us. And that can take us into really dark and destructive places, where we can actually, instead of um, naturally evolve and ascend organically, we start to devolve, right? And we can take on this kind of devolution period or degenerative type of uh, trajectory, I guess you could say. And then understanding the true dark, right, which is the true feminine or the divine feminine. And so when we're talking about that energy, I know I mentioned this before, right? It's that contraction, which is bringing it back to the 0 point, or to the God particle, to, um, the point of all creation. And it's almost like the descension, right? Like the downward spiral, where we're going down and in, so that we can come up and out, right? So I think I already touched on that. Um, Contraction before expansion, where new worlds are born, or new aspects of ourself, right? I also love to see this and teach this energy as being the womb, right? When we think of darkness, when we think of like true darkness and the true feminine, it's the womb portal. I use the symbology a lot with the downward facing triangle, right, which represents water, the womb, the feminine. And this is very symbolic of this period, right? It's going down, it's going inward. It's a process like water, right? It's cleansing, it's purifying, it's really coming back to the source of all creation, right? Where the seeds are planted, it's in the womb. That's where all life begins. So understanding it as that, and as this really beautiful process of rebirth, and allowing ourselves to be in the womb. And when we think of, a mother being pregnant with a child who is in the womb, right? How is she taking care of herself? How is she nurturing herself? How is she loving herself, right? And this is how we can kind of view ourselves at this time, right? Being the mother, mothering ourselves as if we're a little seed, a little embryo in the womb who is about to, be born. So I also like using the analogy of being in the cocoon, You know, you're kind of in your little cocoon, your little cave. I always, you know, talk about being in my little like healing cave or going into the cocoon, into the abyss even, right? You guys will hear this. Symbology, right? Where we're crossing the threshold, crossing the abyss, going through, you know, really treacherous waters, murky, dark, heavy waters, to get to the other side, right? Where there is so much joy and wisdom and light and truth, right? Which is, I think, what we're all essentially searching for. So yeah, where we can slip in, oh, so yeah, sometimes we may just kind of like naturally slip into this phase and come into our cocoon, especially over time. Other times you'll be completely forced into isolation. It can feel like all your friends, your family members, you know, a relationship, a partner, all of these things may be, you know, being ripped away from you, right? It may not be by choice, but that's all happening for you to go inward, right? And to take some time to be in isolation and to really navigate and understand this portal that you're moving through. Yeah, so old parts of you can die and new parts of you can emerge as we are being reborn. And then I did, you know, I'm kind of just repeating myself here, but we're understanding unity, right? The light and the dark and how they are one and the same. We're not obsessing with the light, right? We're not spending too much time on high vibes and always feeling good and all of this love and light, you know, whatever, spiritual bypassing. And we're also being mindful to not go too far into the darkness, because people can get stuck there as well. And there could be an obsession with the shadow and the darkness and the destruction and the chaos, right? And we talked about this, how we can take a bit of a degenerative path, right? Where we can become a lot, very manipulated by dark forces and negative entities and all of this, right? And so when we're in those portals, when we're going through this period, we're learning how to navigate some of those energies as well, so that we can discern and we can distinct and decipher what is of the light, what is pure, what is, you know, truth, and what is not, right? So it's a very discerning time for us to be in as well, for us to um, understand, you know, the whole of the light and the dark, and unity essentially. Um, yeah, I think that's pretty much it in terms of that stuff. So here again, I talk about the shadow, where we're being invited to just visit our shadow, those subconscious or unconscious aspects that are starting to make themselves seen, where sometimes we can see our pain and suffering. So um, because it's so present, this is how we learn to use our light um, to come into that higher knowledge, right? To come into that wisdom. So it's not, yes, it's being in our pain and feeling our pain and understanding and acknowledging and realizing that we're suffering, but also at the same time realizing and acknowledging that we are these beautiful light beings and that we are pure unconditional love, and we can tap into that light and that love that we hold within each and every one of us to transmute this, right? And if it's too much, we can also give it to God, right? We can also give it to the divine to help us and to not be afraid to call on that support when we need it. Because, and even support from loved ones, or, you know, healers and coaches and therapists and anyone, right? Because it is a very difficult time. So not being afraid to ask for help and support when you need it. And then I have a quote here, kind of, you know, to touch base on the shadow and the pain, by Carl Jung. So he said, "There's no coming to consciousness without pain. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, in order to avoid facing their own soul. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious, right? So we're bringing the shadows into light. And then lastly, just to touch on this again, it's a period of cleansing and purification, right? So this was taught in a lot of mystery schools, and for all, like any great mystics, psychics, spiritual masters, right? There's this process of purification and cleansing where we are just releasing all that no longer serves us so that we can become these vessels basically for higher consciousness, right? Higher consciousness to flow through us. So that's essentially all that we're doing. I hope, this made us see that this is nothing to be feared. It's actually quite powerful and beautiful. And yeah, it's just really, it's nothing to be feared, right? And so I did write down also here, lastly, just how we can heal and how we can get through this. Um, Forgiveness. So forgiveness and acceptance are going to be number one when it comes to healing. Um, Finding forgiveness, whether it's others have harmed you and needing to forgive them. And a lot of the times also learning how to forgive ourselves, right? And so when it comes to forgiveness, this is really just to set ourselves free, right? If we're not able to accept and forgive, then whatever we're holding on to will just keep us entrapped and enslaved in that experience or that energy. So forgiveness is the number one healer when it comes to releasing past traumas and experiences that are keeping us in a lower state. Being present, as you guys know, I talked about this a bit. Our other master classes, if you caught them, go back and watch those. Those will be very helpful during this time. Those meditations that we did, or finding your own practices to really be present and to sit with what's arising. Noticing when you're dissociating and you're turning to things for comfort, allowing yourself to do that. I would say it's still okay because you don't want to, um, things can be really intense sometimes, and there will be, there should be some level of allowance around, just disconnecting sometimes and not trying to take on more than you can, but also catching when you're too much into that and interrupting that pattern, right? Yeah, you're scrolling on Instagram for hours and something's wanting to be felt. Well, what can you do? Put your phone down, maybe go take a bath or go write in your journal or meditate or call a friend even, right? There's ways that we can kind of bring ourselves back into presence so that we can really be here with what we're feeling, experiencing, and what's arising to be seen, right? It's just wanting our attention. And then finding community and building connections. So finding others that are also going through similar experiences that you can talk to about this stuff. You may find people, friends or, people in your life that you can talk to about this stuff, or even finding people online, a little online community or a safe space where you can go where people are talking about spirituality and healing and all of this stuff that you're feeling drawn to and coming into, finding those like-minded beings, right, to support you and to go through this with others, because we don't have to go through this alone. We are never going through this alone, but it's nice to have friends and family and others in our life that we can connect with. But also, most importantly, building our connection with self. Learning to love ourselves unconditionally, finding compassion for ourselves, meeting ourselves where we're at with so much love and grace and compassion. Um, I would also say maybe focusing on gratitude. So it can be a time of what feels like great loss, and it can be easy to really focus on all that we're losing, right? Whether it's the friends, the relationships, the job. But instead of focusing on what's being lost, we can start to bring our attention and our awareness toward what is being gained. And it can be difficult because we're usually in this void, right? That's another term that can also be really connected to the dark night is going into the void or into the abyss, which is the point of nothingness, right? It's the 0 point. It's everything and nothing at the same time. And so it can be a little bit tricky because, as we know, we naturally there's this fear of the unknown, and we don't know what's happening, and we don't know what's coming, and we don't know what's next or what our next step is. But the more that we can focus on that's all being manifested right now, and all that's being let go of, all that's being released and cleared and purged, is making space for what's truly meant for us to emerge and to take form, right? So just focusing on what's being gained, right? And then lastly, I wrote, so this phase has a lot to do with allowing, right? I've written posts about um, allowing rather than forcing. And a lot of the times, this can also be an invitation for us to release control and showing us ways that we're trying to micromanage or control every little thing in our life. And it's just showing us more and more that mm, we may not always have, the control that we want or think that we have. And so we can really come into this place of complete surrender. And surrender isn't giving up, right? Surrender is just allowing. It's allowing for whatever is moving through us or, toward us or whatever, wherever we're being guided or moved, to just allow that to be, right? And to move with it rather than trying to steer ourselves in different directions where we think we should be going, right? It's trusting and knowing that there's a greater plan for us and that it's all just going to be revealed, right? The more that we can just let go and surrender. So yeah, allowing ourselves to quantum leap, take a quantum leap and jump into the unknown and know that we will be caught and held, and we are so supported and guided, and leaning into all of that. So that's about it. That's all I have to share on, navigating a dark night of the soul. I'm not sure if you guys have any questions, if there's anything you wanted me to expand on, reflections, anything you want to share. And if not, that's fine. Yeah.
Sorry, I think I lost my connection.
Yeah, so did I.
So did I, but you guys are back now.
That was so weird. I've never seen that happen.
That was super weird.
It felt like it froze and
Yeah.
then it just like the whole Zoom just closed. Did
Oh,
it do that for you guys too?
My Zoom didn't close. It just did a very weird freezy thing.
Weird. Okay. So I was asking if you guys had any questions or anything you wanted to share when I froze. So if you said anything I didn't hear. And
I
if
don't
not,
have
that's
anything.
fine. No, we're good. That kind of cleared things up. We understand this dark night of the soul initiation. Hopefully we're more like excited for it and here for it and going to channel all the wisdom that will come through and surrender into the void. Yeah. But yeah, I was gonna say I wasn't planning on doing a meditation tonight. Unless you guys want to just do like a little meditation, if that feels like it's something that would be supportive before we log off or at least stop recording. I know we might do some off-camera discussion because that usually happens. But let me know if you want to do a meditation, and if not, I'll just stop the recording and then we can sign off whenever we're ready.
I think a meditation would be a good idea.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, if you guys are up to
Yeah.
it.
Well, we won't go so long. I know the other ones we did like 20, 25 minutes, but we can just do like a nice little meditation. We can all sleep like babies.
Yeah.
So I'm freezing. I'm going to turn my fireplace on.
Yeah, if it's okay, I'll run to the washroom and come back.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
We'll take a little break.
Okay, thank you.
Oh my gosh, her space looks so cozy.
I know it does. So
I'm like
then
rolling around trying to get all the blankets and get warm, and she just has everything so nicely set up in there.
it does look very cozy. I have a blanket too. I'm going to get all cozy. Oh, it snowed so much today. It's like a winter wonderland here. I guess you guys get snow, eh?
Not yet. I
Not
heard
yet.
it's a thing, but I haven't had it yet, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I would be too. There she is.
Thank you so much for waiting.
Yeah, we were just admiring your cozy little space there with
Oh,
your
really?
blankets and pillows. We're like, oh, we want to be there.
Thank you.
And your lighting, it's so zen.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess what we'll do with tonight's meditation, I'll guide us into our heart. I think even going through most of my meditations, we always go into the heart, but especially with dark nights and these challenging times that we're all living through, it's so important for us to connect with our heart. And the more that we can do this, the more that we will feel just guided and supported during these times. And it will be a lot easier for us to move with these energies. So I think, yeah, it's perfect that we are doing a meditation. So anyone who's catching the recording as well, that would be another tip, is just connecting with your heart, right? So whenever we're ready, if you want to just get comfy, if you want to be lying down, that's fine, or seated, Just find a place that's comfortable for you, and you can close the eyes. And start to bring your attention inward. And so in tonight's class, we talked about the inward journey and this initiation as being a time of really going inward. So as we sit here with our eyes closed and our attention inward, we can just start to get a little bit more comfortable and familiar with our inner world, our our inner landscape. And we can begin by doing this, or we can begin doing this by bringing our attention to the breath. And simply just observing the breath, not changing or manipulating it in any way. Just simply watching, observing, bringing our full attention to just be here, focused on our breath. And as we do this, we may feel a sense of relaxation start to wash over. Feeling a little bit more grounded, centered, supported. Just a natural sense of calm and safety. Now we can start to really slow down the breath, perhaps about half speed. We want to try and get between 5 and 8 seconds. Breathing in through the nose and exhaling out through the nose. And as we continue to slow down the breath, we may also start to feel or sense this breath expanding into every cell, every atom of our being. Feeling these inhales and exhales. Really sensing this breath as it expands and continues to take over our entire being, maybe even taking on nature of its own. And we can continue to focus on the breath, or if we'd like, we can start to just scan the body Just noticing any areas that we may be holding on to, any tension, any heaviness or density. And with our attention and our breath, just allowing ourselves to be with whatever is arising. Allowing the breath to move through the crevices and around these areas of tension, density, heaviness. Allowing the breath to really expand, soften, dissolve any of this heaviness, any of this tension. We may have naturally been drawn to bring our attention to the center of our chest, our heart space. And if not, we can begin to do so now, allowing your awareness to just sit gently at the altar of your heart. Perhaps even imagining your breath being pulled in through the heart with every inhale, and exhaling, releasing and expanding energy out through the heart. And as we continue to sit here and focus our attention, our breath, the center of our chest, our heart, can invite a gentle, loving smile on our face. As we invite in compassion, forgiveness, acceptance, gratitude, and unconditional love for our being. Taking a moment to just sit with this energy of unconditional love, gratitude, acceptance, forgiveness, compassion. And allowing it to flood through each and every cell, every atom of our entire being. And I'm also being guided to instruct us to place just the left hand gently over the heart and the right hand in the lower abdomen, lower belly, our womb. As we spoke about the true dark, the divine feminine, the womb, the point of all creation, we can bring loving awareness to this space. Allowing ourselves to be held in deep love and compassion for where we're at, what we're moving through, and what is being birthed. And if it feels good for you, now would be a beautiful time to ask your higher self if they have any messages, any wisdom, anything they wish to share with you at this time as we sit in silence and open ourselves up to receive. And if it feels good for you, you can bring your right hand and place it just gently over the left at heart center. As we close with one more round of breath, breathing in through the nose and just holding the inhale, the top of the breath, and then opening mouth sign to release all that's no longer serving us. We'll do this 2 more times actually. Breathing in through the nose, holding at the top of the lungs, exhaling, sighing to release. Last time on your own time. You can start to bring gentle movement back into the body. Just allowing yourself to move intuitively. Shaking out any tension. Mhm. Opening the eyes and bringing yourself back into this space. Mm. How do we feel?
Feel very peaceful and good.
Good. All right. Well, I think that's all, unless anyone has anything else they want to share before I stop the recording. Thank you, ladies, for joining live. I love having you here, and it's always such a pleasure to see your faces and to connect with your energy, and just to connect, and seeing your openness and willingness to receive is, I love it. And those who are catching the recording, also thank you so much for taking the time to watch the video. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions or anything that you wanted to share. I always love hearing from you. I do have a couple little announcements that I wanted to make. So those of you who have, or who are here and who have received this recording, also, I wanted to say thank you for subscribing to my mailing list. I'm really excited that I finally, have kind of put that together. I think it'll make it a lot easier moving forward with these classes. So you can just gain access to the links, and you can join whenever. You don't have to register each time. And I also am going to be offering karma sessions. So on Instagram, you may have seen this already. I shared, I think last week, that every month I will be announcing a just like a gifted session. So it'll be a 1-hour session for me. It's going to be offered on a first come, first serve basis. So once that email is sent out, you can reply if you're interested in receiving a free 1-hour session, one-on-one session with myself. And then first come, first serve. So whoever replies first, I'll let you know, and then we can go ahead and book and schedule a time to meet. So be sure that you stay subscribed if you are wanting to gain access to that. Also feel free to just share, these classes with anyone that may ever want to join, even if they're not subscribed and you have the link. By all means, you can invite anyone. So yeah, I think that's about it. I also have my one-on-one coaching program, Inner Alchemy, which is a 3-month coaching program with me for anyone who is wanting more support, especially moving through these times of transition that we're all living through, and also these more personal times of transition when we are navigating a dark night of the soul, or a period of transformation or transition. My work can be very supportive in assisting you through that. This is really what I love to do. I love to help others who are going through, difficult times, just allowing them to see the love and the light and the beauty that exists within each and every one of us, and really remember who we truly are, because that's definitely the journey I've been on, and one that has helped me so much. And I am just here to kind of spread all that I have learned, and help others move through whatever they're experiencing as well. So if you're interested, you can always email me. You can book a free consultation call or alignment call via the link in my bio, and we can discuss how we can continue to work together moving forward, if that's of any interest. But yeah, I think that's it. I will, if you're watching this masterclass and you're wanting to connect and learn more, let me know that it was from this masterclass, and there is a special offering for those who attended this class and are wanting additional support. There's a bit of a discount on that for you guys as well. So you just have to reach out and let me know if you're interested. But anyway, that's all. I will be ending the recording, and I hope you all have a beautiful evening.